giant of Kandahar, a 13-foot tall monster with red hair and six-fingered hands that lived in the mountains of Afghanistan, was killed and covered up by the U.S. government.
In 2002, a U.S. military patrol vanished without a trace in the remote mountains near Kandahar. What began as a routine mission turned into a nightmare when a Special Forces unit found evidence of something far beyond any known enemy. A massive humanoid creature that defied explanation and was silenced by powerful forces. What if this wasn't just a monster story, but a real encounter hidden by layers of government denial? And what does it say about the secrets still buried in war zones, and the lengths some will go to keep them hidden? The Lost Patrol and Search. In the spring of 2002, during Operation Enduring Freedom, a U.S. Army infantry squad was deployed near the rugged mountains outside Kandahar. Their mission was straightforward: patrol a known insurgent supply route and report any activity. However, hours passed with no communication, and attempts to reach the squad via radio failed entirely. When a full day elapsed without contact, alarm bells rang, and command quickly mobilized a Special Forces unit to locate the missing soldiers.
You were in Afghanistan in 2002, and you were called into a very remote section of Afghanistan because a patrol had basically gone missing.
Exactly.
These elite Tier 1 operatives, trained for the most dangerous recovery missions, moved fast into the area. Upon arrival, they found belongings and gear scattered across a cliffside, tools torn to pieces, tactical vests shredded, and deep drag marks marring the ground. Strangely, there was no blood, no bodies, and no signs of a typical firefight. The eerie silence around the site unnerved even these battle-hardened soldiers, signaling that something was profoundly wrong. The lack of physical evidence suggested the soldiers hadn't simply been ambushed or killed by insurgents. Instead, it appeared as if whatever had attacked them had erased all traces except for scattered equipment. This wasn't the pattern of Taliban ambushes, nor did any conventional predator fit the scene. The mystery deepened as the search party approached the mouth of a nearby cave, the last known coordinate tied to the missing patrol. Standard operating procedures called for extreme caution, and the team carefully fanned out with weapons drawn. One soldier ventured cautiously into the cave's darkness, ready for any threat. What they found inside brought a sharp silence over the team. Shattered human bones and damaged U.S. military equipment lay strewn throughout the cavern. Though the department officially denied any incident, stories leaked internally and persisted among soldiers and independent investigators alike. No official after-action reports or confirmations of a missing squad were ever released, and no names were disclosed. Those on the ground, however, shared whispered accounts of encountering something far beyond military expectations. Stories described the soldiers facing an unknown, human-sized or larger mystery that defied logic and was quickly buried by powerful interests. The rescue mission had shifted into a classified nightmare, one shadowed by silence and secrecy. The soldiers who spoke under anonymity described a palpable tension, a feeling that the forces they were dealing with were unlike anything seen before in Afghanistan or anywhere else. The vanished patrol became a dark legend, not just for its mystery, but for the raw fear it engendered. Families of the missing were left in the dark, and the official silence stoked rumors and conspiracy theories that only grew stronger over time. This missing patrol case did not just vanish quietly. It ignited a cascade of speculation and covert inquiries. The true nature of what they encountered would soon ripple beyond military channels, hinting at something terrifying that awaited inside that cave. The scene was set for an encounter that would challenge the boundaries between known warfare and the unimaginable. As the investigators pushed beyond the cliffside and into the shadows of the cave, what they uncovered inside would redefine their understanding of the dangers lurking in the Kandahar Mountains. The Cave Discovery. Going into the cave was far more disturbing than it had been anticipated by anyone. The entrance was full of rags of uniforms, busted gun barrels, and stripped-down comms. The remains hinted at severe violence, however. It was strange that none of them just left the place. They all seemed to be incapacitated on purpose. The team thought that the missing men had been yanked inside and their fight erased completely. In the cave's inner part, one of the soldiers caught sight of an M4 carbine with its barrel badly bent and that still stuck in the rock wall. This single point should have turned the whole area into a scene for a very elaborate forensic exploration. But as the group moved on, it slowly dawned upon everybody that the normal rules had ceased to be applicable. Human skeletons, long thigh bones, fractured skulls, and ribs that seemed to have been pulled apart with great strength and carelessly discarded were scattered all over the floor of the cave. A huge majority of these bones had huge tooth or smash marks, which were practically impossible for any of the current local predators to cause, because the size was just too big. Besides wolves and mountain lions, which were the main contenders, no insurgent tactics were considered either. There were no corpses, but the disarticulated remains were there, almost as if whatever had done it had swallowed or harvested the soldiers and was left with only some parts. The cave was a horrible place that had a very mysterious clue one can't even think of in a usual way. Witnesses later recounted a shadowy figure emerging silently from the deeper recesses of the cave, moving upright, fast, and without making a sound. The creature's presence immediately alarmed the soldiers. Descriptions painted it as grotesquely tall, estimated to be between 13 and 15 feet in height. Its humanoid form was distorted. Long limbs, sun-bleached skin, and thick, matted red hair falling from head to toe. Most chilling of all was the weapon it carried, a massive, crude spear or pike. Eyewitnesses spoke of the creature's 6 fingers on each hand and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark gloom. This was no ordinary animal or enemy combatant. It was a monster, a biological enigma capable of silent, lethal assault. The soldiers had stumbled into a nightmare, hiding in plain sight. Before they could react, the giant lunged, impaling one soldier known only as Dan. The rest of the unit responded with a furious barrage of gunfire. Despite the rapid volley from M4s, sidearms, and even a Barrett sniper rifle, the creature barely flinched, enduring strike after strike with terrifying resilience. It was only after a powerful burst from the Barrett that the giant collapsed, its massive body shaking dust from the cave ceiling. What the soldiers witnessed inside that cave was something entirely unprecedented. This wasn't a typical enemy, an animal or folklore come to life. It was a weaponized, otherworldly being, hidden in Kandahar's remote mountains, biding its time. The discovery raised urgent questions. What was this creature, and why had it been concealed for so long? The brutal clarity of the firefight left no room for doubt. The soldiers had faced a threat designed to kill, engineered perhaps, rather than born naturally. This would be only the beginning of a story that the world was never meant to hear. The giant encounter. The firefight in that cave was short but ferocious, lasting no more than 30 seconds according to multiple eyewitnesses. Despite being outgunned, the creature showed an almost unnatural ability to shrug off bullets that would have felled any human or animal. The initial volleys from standard M4 carbines inflicted little visible damage, only causing the giant to stumble briefly. When the designated marksman fired a decisive burst from a Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle, the creature finally collapsed. Its massive body thudded heavily onto the rocky floor, the impact echoing ominously inside the cavern. But even in death, the giant was far from ordinary. Its anatomy was bizarre. 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot, and jagged, triangular teeth that suggested a predatory nature. The creature's skin was leathery and sun-scorched. hardened by exposure to the harsh mountain environment. It wore crude garments fashioned from a patchwork of hides, possibly from animals or even humans. The thick, oily red hair that covered its body extended from its scalp down to its lower back, exuding a faint odor described as a mix of decay, rotting copper, and dried blood. Eyewitnesses estimated the creature stood between 12 and 15 feet tall and weighed well over 1,100 pounds. Its symmetrical proportions, balanced hands, limbs, and torso indicated it was no freak mutation or diseased anomaly. The giant's alert eyes seemed responsive before death, suggesting a level of awareness that unnerved the soldiers. The battlefield silence that followed was punctuated only by the confusion and disbelief of those present. One soldier described their feelings not as fear, but as profound uncertainty and bafflement over what they had just faced. The encounter challenged everything they knew about biology, warfare, and reality itself. Following the engagement, the team quickly radioed for extraction, grappling with the impossibility of moving such a body without assistance. The tone of urgency and confusion highlighted that this was not just a combat mission. It was an encounter with something ancient, undocumented, and deeply unsettling. The aftermath of the encounter and what happened to the body would soon deepen the mystery, shrouding the truth in layers of secrecy and silence that still reverberate today. The discovery inside that cave would spark a chain of events unraveling far beyond the mountains, exposing contradictions and cover-ups that remain unresolved. Aftermath and cover-up. The moments after the firefight were swift and chilling. Instead of a standard medical evacuation or debrief, what arrived was a CH-47 Chinook helicopter.
There were two CH-47s that conducted emergency or hard landings yesterday. We received more information this morning as to probable cause for this event.
Large enough to carry heavy cargo, but oddly devoid of the usual medics or support personnel. Those who disembarked wore no identifiers, no unit patches, and they spoke no words. Their purpose was clear. They came solely to recover the giant's body. The corpse was secured onto a netted platform suspended beneath the aircraft, handled with practiced precision, as if this procedure had been done before. No further communication followed, and the aircraft vanished into the sky with the massive corpse in tow. Back at base, each member of the recovery unit faced intense interrogation, separated and asked to sign extensive non-disclosure agreements. These NDAs went beyond normal secrecy protocols. They forbade even acknowledging the mission's existence, threatening severe consequences for any breach. Soldiers who refused to sign faced immediate reassignment, discharge, or transfer to obscure posts, while compliant personnel were instructed that the incident never happened. Perhaps most disturbing was the complete erasure of the soldier who was killed, known only as Dan, from official military records. His death was absent from any public casualty lists, and no record exists confirming his service or passing in that area and period. This disappearance of documentation echoed the hermetic silence surrounding the entire event, fueling rumors and mistrust among veterans and independent researchers. Whispers of a cover-up spread unchecked, with official channels consistently denying any firefight or missing patrols in Kandahar at that time. One medic, reputedly defying orders, reportedly confided quietly to a fellow soldier that it exists, confirming the giant's reality through hushed conversations. Despite government attempts to suppress information, stories of the Kandahar giant spread rapidly within military ranks and online forums. These accounts grew into a legend supported by fragmented testimonials and anonymous confirmations, even as official denial intensified. The suppression paradoxically fueled interest and suspicion far beyond military confines. Flight logs from Bagram Air Base during the extraction period reveal a curious 24-hour gap where tracking data abruptly stops. This missing segment hints at deliberate obfuscation, as such blackouts are uncommon and typically reserved for classified operations. Requests filed under the Freedom of Information Act often return no relevant documents, or they include heavily redacted, incomplete files, which only adds to the mystery. The thoroughness of the disappearance of records and the suppression of testimony suggest a high-level decision to bury the truth. This systematic erasure is not typical even for black operations, which usually maintain internal records for accountability. The nature of this silence hints at the incident's broader implications, potentially involving classified technologies or entities that the military and government wished to conceal. Veterans who initially spoke out saw their credibility attacked or were pressured by former commanding officers to withdraw from public discussion. A few individuals vanished from public life altogether, their voices silenced. Even popular fact-checking platforms and debunking sites struggled to address the core evidence. When claims around the incident resurfaced, these platforms often relied on the absence of physical proof, rather than engaging directly with detailed eyewitness consistency. Some rebuttals incorrectly referenced unrelated deaths or fabricated details to dismiss the story entirely. Yet the consistent testimonies from multiple independent sources painted a detailed and disturbing picture that authorities seemingly intended to keep hidden. The aftermath of the encounter grew into a stark lesson in secrecy and information control, where truth was obscured to the point that many began doubting the soldiers' own eyes. What should have sparked an official investigation and global scrutiny instead became a quiet erasure, pushing the mystery deeper into shadows too dark for easy illumination. Though the giant's body vanished with the Chinook, the story did not disappear entirely. The hunt for answers pressed forward, met increasingly by invisible walls and closed doors. Investigations and obstructions. As whispers of the Kandahar giant began permeating military and civilian circles alike, a growing number of independent investigators, journalists, and veterans took up the quest for the truth. Despite facing intense skepticism, many dug through fragmented accounts, filed Freedom of Information Act requests, and tried to trace military records related to missing personnel or unusual operations near Kandahar in 2002. These efforts, however, were met with frustrating dead ends and inconsistencies. For every FOIA request submitted, the responses were nearly uniform. No records found or heavily redacted files with missing information. Such uniformity suggested one of two things. Either the incident never occurred, or the files had been classified or suppressed to extraordinary lengths. In one instance, a document briefly mentioned a personnel recovery operation near Kandahar around the time of the incident, but it was notably incomplete and later removed from public access. This pattern of vanishing documentation raised more questions than answers. Military and veteran forums like Above Top Secret and Reddit's r/military became hubs for anonymous disclosures and discussion. Several users claiming first-hand knowledge or involvement shared consistent details: the giant's height, 6 fingers, red hair, the sudden ambush, and the overwhelming firepower required to fell the creature. These accounts appeared across multiple years and countless anonymous posts, making it implausible to dismiss them as a manufactured hoax. The consistency spoke to a genuine, albeit tightly held, narrative. The story of the giant still managed to float in the public eye with the help of a few alternative media people. One such person was El Marzulli, who through his interviews with unidentified soldiers made the story known to larger audiences. Later, the broadcasting of this saga through radio shows focusing on paranormal things and conspiracies further amplified its reach. and a vast net of speculation was created that included government cover-ups, ancient myths, and secret military operations, and so on. The increasing attention resulted in an increasingly aggressive effort to suppress the development of the saga. It all started around 2016, when the digital traces of the Kandahar giant story started to be removed. The video clips disappeared, blog articles were taken off, and old interviews became unavailable. Formerly talkative military personnel on the internet forums started to deny what they had said or to quit posting at all. Some claimed they were under the pressure from their previous employers. Others were simply afraid that they might lose their jobs or their reputations might suffer. This deletion of digital evidence went on as meticulously as the official silence. Notably, skeptics attempting to explain the incident as a product of folklore or combat stress often failed to address the tangible elements: human bones, shredded gear, intensive gunfight details, and the disappearance of a soldier's record. Psychological explanations cannot account for the broad network of consistent testimonies or why key documents remain hidden. The public was left with an unsettling mix of rumor, myth, and suppressed fact. What emerges from the smoke of denial and online shadows is a story of relentless inquiry met by systematic obstruction. The reality of the Kandahar giant is obscured by a fortress of secrecy, but the scattered pieces refuse to disappear completely. Somewhere in those gaps lies a truth far darker and more complex than most are willing to admit. The silence following such persistent investigation raises the question not only of what was encountered in that cave, but also of why it remains hidden from the world. Folklore, trauma, and reality. The Kandahar giant story lies at the crossroads of myth, war, and mystery. Afghan folklore is filled with tales of red-haired giants, called Deo or Ifrit, who guard cursed mountains and attack those who trespass.
A 13-foot monster with red hair and hands with 6 fingers, whose home was in the Afghanistan mountains, was allegedly killed up and covered up by the U.S. government.
When U.S. soldiers entered these regions, it's possible that local legends colored their perception of what they encountered in the desert's shadows. The creature's description, towering height, 6 fingers and toes, fiery hair, mirrors biblical accounts of the Nephilim, the half-divine giants mentioned in Genesis and the Book of Enoch. This parallel has inspired speculation that the Kandahar giant could be more than myth, a remnant of something ancient and terrifying. Skeptics point to combat stress and trauma as explanations, noting that war can distort perception. Yet, the consistency of reports, the mention of wrecked gear and large remains, and the alleged recovery of a body challenge simple dismissal. Several soldiers described the same details years apart, suggesting a shared event rather than hallucination. Adding to the mystery are missing military files, vanishing records, and strict non-disclosure orders, odd even by classified standards. Such secrecy fuels suspicions that the incident touched something beyond ordinary warfare. The story endures because it balances between legend and possibility. Whether the giant of Kandahar was myth, misunderstanding, or an unclassified discovery, it speaks to a universal truth. Humanity's oldest fears often echo through the unknown. Until evidence emerges or the silence breaks, the line between folklore and fact remains hauntingly thin. The Kandahar giant story blends mystery, myth, and a chilling reality that remains buried beneath layers of secrecy. Whether legend or truth, it forces us to question what governments hide and what we might one day uncover. If this kind of hidden truth fascinates you, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more explorations into the world's most compelling mysteries.